was riding motorcycles, when I had my Honda 750 and my BMW, in a 6-year span from 1974 to 1980, I put on about 150,000 miles in town and road miles, traveling to the Alaska, like I mentioned. I went down to Guatemala. I went to California a few times. I went to the East Coast a few times. I began collecting motorcycles in August of 2005, so this would be almost 3 years. And in that time, I've purchased nearly 500 motorcycles, and at this point, I have like a little more than 300. At one time, I think I had 80 brands. I don't really know anymore. I certainly have it here on my Excel sheet. I could add it all up. But I'd primarily, my passion runs toward Italian motorcycles. Let me tell you, can I explain to you what we got here? We've got I've got two Ducati 750 GTs. This is the, I was explaining to you earlier about how this is a V-twin. This is why the Ducati Tistas consider this an L-twin, because it's mounted longitudinally. That's also a V-twin. It's also 90 degrees, but it's transversely mounted. It's mounted across the frame. The bike with the green tank over here. You can see here that this frame is triangulated. They call this like either a space frame or trellis frame, I believe. As opposed to this motorcycle that you can see the frame goes all the way from here, all the way under here and up, and then back down. So it's basically cradling, or it's a big loop. It seems like for the European market, just a number and a letter seems to suffice, like G3 or T5, T3. But for we Americans, the Europeans needed to kind of jazz it up, make it a little more sexy. So they think that that works for us, and you know, quite frankly, I think it does. I just didn't have a little cash pot that I could pull from. So the word here we would call it is I scrambled around and just did what I needed to do, you know, to get them, because of the passion involved for the bikes. And so all of this is really my brother's fault. This is not my doing, my brother, because he and I thought we had an agreement to where he would actually offer a motorcycle to me if he wanted to sell me one. Now, when I found out he was on eBay, I looked at it, and so I bid on it. I've never met an Italian yet to actually to hear the proper Italian pronunciation, but most people call them Lavertas. And so this is called the 750 SF. The interesting thing about this bike is that there are this firm, Laverta, was an agricultural implement. The bikes in my garage, the bike I want to go jump on to go ride is my MV Agusta 750 S America. It's a phenomenal motorcycle. These are sand cast motors. These bolts, the whole thing takes off. The crankshaft it rides, I believe, in a series of 7 bearings. This one here is an original model, 2,281 miles, original paint. What do you have to say? I say this is probably the most exotic motorcycle I have.
It's all gears, and it's going to take a while for the motor to become warm enough, so you don't really hear a lot of that engine noise. This isn't really that bad.
This actually turned into what I would call a second job. I would kind of work during the day at doing my regular business, and then when I started doing all this, I would kind of troll the internet at night, making deals with people or whatever. And then once I agreed to buy something, I'd have to go find the money. And when I found the money, wherever it was, I would have to then try to localize it. I'd try to get it into like an account. But the first couple of years, it was ridiculous. I mean, because I was burning the candle at both ends, they say. it was overwhelming. The paperwork, just the organization. I mean, this doesn't look that organized, and yet it really is. It's not slick. It's not real professional.
This one is called the 120-degree crank. It's a triple. And when you have a triple, when you have a 3-cylinder, you have there's different ways mechanically you can arrange the cylinder firing pattern. And a 180-degree method is where the 2 outer cylinders, the pistons are up when the middle one is all the way down. And so that's called a 180-degree firing sequence. Yes, they were on that sheet. I've got a place down in San Antonio. Actually, it's at a air park. It's called an air park hangar condo. You don't own the land, but you own the structure. You're part of the structure. It's a little area about 1,300 feet, and I actually purchased that just so I don't have to pay a lot of rent. I've got about 50 bikes down there. And then I have up in Oklahoma, where my father and my brother live, or have a farm. My brother and I have a building up there that we share, a metal building, and I think I've got about 160 motorcycles up there. This whole container here, storage unit, is a row of MV Agustas and then a row of Mondials, starting with that GP race bike there and coming around here and going up through these first 4 bikes lining this way. So these are all Mondials. This is called a Mival. And I think it's just a really, really pretty motorcycle. The only bike here in the 70s, from the 70s, is this bike right here. This is an MV Agusta 350cc twin called the Ipota C. What I really like are these are called CSTLs. These are similar to the 2 bikes I have in my study, where we were in my office, that I was telling you about, or that you've taken pictures of. One's the Squalo, and one is the Disco Volante, which the Disco Volante means flying saucer in Italian. Volante is the fly, and Disco is a saucer. I really don't know how many of these run or how many don't, or what degree they do. When I was overwhelmed in purchasing all of these, I mean, they just came in so fast, and I don't have a mechanic. I don't have the funds, the money to hire a guy. I'm not really a mechanic, but I know how to try to get these things started, and I know a little bit about stuff, but I simply don't have the time, or haven't had it yet anyway. So. At some point, though, we'll check into all that. You can actually see where the carburetor goes. This is not the cylinder. This is the head. The cylinder is inset into the motor here. And I think this is called a two-stage head is what it's called. I think it's for purposes of racing, where you could just take off this stage, and I'm not really certain. I don't know all of the details, but this is a Rumi. And Capriola, that deer is actually named Capriola. So they named the motorcycle for that deer, which is in a certain, I think it's around the Dolomites or something like that of northern Italy. But I love the badging of these motorcycles. This is what they call a dustbin fairing. Now, how authentic this is, I don't know. I mean, something makes me think it might be somewhat authentic, but I don't think it is. I think it's probably a facsimile, a replica, but nevertheless, it still evokes the image of what, this all was around like the mid-50s when they started doing these huge fairings. This is called a Guzzino, which means little Guzzi, basically, 65 cc's. And so that actually is the shock absorber. This is called a gravity damper. It's a dampener is what it is, I believe, gravity damper.
These 500 motorcycles, I think there's this kind of an average. It seems like about almost $5,000 a motorcycle. So I think I've spent probably over $2.5 million, which is absolutely a phenomenal amount of money. Like I was saying earlier, this isn't just something I had sitting in a bank account. It's been very fluid. There's been the dynamic's been kind of crazy, actually. And so my wife actually has been worried about me. I got to bike number 7, and all of a sudden some bikes started showing up, and she asked me one day, she said, "What's going on?" You know, and I said, "Well, I don't know, I'm just buying some motorcycles." And so she loves motorcycles, so she was supportive of that, but kind of from a distance. She was kind of like had the eye on me, you know, and so like, you know, and so then I just kind of went crazy. My career has been as a contractor, in the construction trades, the residential trades. Basically, we put on roofs for houses that are newly built. We have a Matobi racer. This is a Perilla Grand Sport called a GS. And look down on this Benelli. This is a Benelli racer, which is the same 4 Quattro Tempi as the one in the other room. That's just the regular model. This is a racer. Then over here, the Crown. This is a Maserati 160cc 4-stroke motor, which I think is one of the most exquisite bikes I have. Then next to this, the Maserati is called a Miller Balsamo, which I don't think you see a whole lot of. I've never seen a motor split this way, where it's black and aluminum. What I'd like to do is to have some sort of museum. They're getting to be very popular here now, which actually is kind of scary to me in a sense, because typically whenever something gets very popular, then that more or less means it's kind of a fad. And generally those have a shelf life, a very limited timeline. I decided, okay, I'll cheat here. I'll just white this out, and I'll buy these 4 motorcycles, and then I'll draw another black line across here. I would prefer if they would just send you a picture and a price at that time. But it seems like there's an idea, it's kind of like fishing, where they want to hook you. They want to intrigue you, pique your interest, and then give you the price. And that worked for a little bit until some other motorcycles became available, and I wrestled with this, with the passion of buying the bikes for pure passion versus it interfering kind of with my financial well-being. I have really accomplished a lot of what I tried to do there arbitrarily by making by closing the door. So I haven't thrown the key away, but the door is effectively closed. It just kind of opens up a little bit. Just doesn't open wide anymore. Then this is interesting. This is a 1993 Gilera CX 125cc 2-stroke. These really aren't even supposed to be in the United States due to the Department of Transportation, the EPA, all the rules about 2-strokes. This is a single-sided front fork as well as a single-sided swing arm. This is the Ducati 200 Elite right here. And this particular tank is what they call the jelly mold tank, I believe, because it looks like something that you could make with Jello or whatever in terms of, you know, so that I believe it's either called the jelly bean tank with jelly mold more properly. But what I think is interesting is the color scheme. I mean, the color scheme is almost identical. These are more the capriolas like I have over there, which I think are really interesting because of the pressed steel frame. This is reminiscent or evocative of how the old BMWs were, where you actually had the tank underneath the frame, not on top of it, what they call like a saddle tank. These straddle the frames. But I love these bikes with the little grommet here and how this tank sits inside the frame. And this bike, as beautiful as this bike looks, because it looks like a Laverda SFC, but it's not. And this bike is my one real failing. Now this is the bike that I spent a lot of money for and didn't get even close to what I wanted. This one here, I bought it from a German chap who bought it from an Italian guy,
And this is where the difference between a fake and a replica come in. And then last but not least is this Moto Guzzi Eldorado. This goes back to what I was saying earlier. This is the 850. This is the V to show the motor, but this is the name, 850 Eldorado. It wasn't just enough to say 850 T3. They came up with Eldorado, and so it became a very popular bike.
If I had to boil everything down, distill everything down, just to keep 3 motorcycles, I definitely, one of them would be the MV Agusta 750 S America. One of them would be a BMW, just due to, I have 3 BMWs at this point. It would be probably one of the Daytona Orange R90S bikes, so that's 2. The third one, you know, that would be very difficult. At this point, I think I'd just like to say those 2 for sure, and I really would never want to have to boil it down just to 3.